And we are live. Hello.
And we are live. Hello, Big Pod. How are you doing?
Doing great. How
Good.
are you?
Look at us streaming on our own. Oh my gosh. You know, who knew that we could make this happen without Martin?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, amazing. Welcome everybody. This is SlimDevOps YouTube version for the Slim Hackathon. We're coming to you. It's Wednesday, November 23rd. We had a request come in from some of you Slimplicity hackathoners out there who were looking for some ways to use our platform to slim your containers, the containerized projects that you're building for Slim.AI and for that hackathon project. And normally our fearless leader, Martin Wimpress, would be here with us, leading us on stream and doing all the technical details and walking us through all of this. Unfortunately, Martin has fallen ill. And so Big Pod, Primoz and I decided to take up the mantle and see if we could stream directly on YouTube, and we are doing it, and that's what we're here to do today. So, how does that sound for a challenge, Big Pod?
Sounds nice.
All
I'm
right.
just making sure to tell everybody that we're live.
Cool. All right. I was actually just going to go do that myself. We are all discombobulated. And hi, Chris. Welcome to the stream. Glad you could join. Yeah, so we'll get started. I think the goal here was to really kind of help walk people through like how you would use Slim.AI specifically. Go through some of the tools and kind of like processes that we typically see people go through with building containers. And then we'll get into some of the like slimming and hardening and security capabilities that are in the platform. If we have a little time, maybe we could talk a little Docker Slim and show the open source tool and how that works. And the goal is to record the video so that we can share it with everybody who's doing the hackathon later on. We've had a tremendous uptake in the hackathon. It's been really cool to see. I think well over 300 entrants, number of teams, a lot of people doing some really cool stuff. People have been talking to us about Django projects, data science projects. Somebody's talking about something that had to run locally that builds a model and then runs in the cloud. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting and innovative things going on. So pretty excited to see all of those projects. Great. And if you're joining us for the first time, feel free to jump into the chat and say hi. Big Pod and I will be in the chat. And yeah, and if Danny, 300 entrants plus. That was actually what Lindsay told me before she took off for Thanksgiving. So we probably have even more now. So very exciting. I think we'd be remiss without wishing Martin well wishes. Hopefully he will get to see the stream at some point and can grade us on how we did. I think given the last minute nature of the stream, it'll all be good. So yeah, Danny, you judges are going to be busy. So Danny, who's in chat here with us, is one of the judges. And if people have questions about judging criteria or if that kind of stuff comes up, maybe Danny can give their thoughts on that. But yeah, with that, you want to kind of jump into the platform, Big Pod? Is that what we want to do? Maybe jump over to the screen share and we can jump into the
Sure.
Slim.AI platform.
Sure.
Cool. All right.
And
well, maybe before we start, Big Pod, maybe we want to say a little bit about what each of us does at Slim.AI, so that if people have questions for us in Discord, they can ask. You want to give a quick introduction, like what you do for Slim?
I'm an engineer. First of all, I mostly work on stuff that make the developers' experience nicer. I work on examples and sometimes also work on internal tools.
Cool.
Basically making internal developers and external developers' lives easier.
Nice. Yeah, and I'm Peter. I run the growth side of the house. So in addition to streaming with Martin, I write a lot of the blog posts and content and tutorials and do all of that kind of stuff that help developers use the tool set that we have here at Slim. So Cool. All right. Well, yeah. Why don't we jump in? You wanna show my screen share, and hopefully we're all set up here, and I can kind of take us through the Slim platform, and we'll jump into some code. We'll build some containers, and then we'll bring those into the Slim platform, and we will slim those and show people how to secure them. So
Okay. I wasn't sure if transition will run properly. It won't. It won't. But yes, I did. It was made specifically for streaming, first of all, so it should work. But I'm gonna make sure it doesn't get too hot either way. Go ahead and start. Uh, audio on who?
Can you guys hear me, Peter? Or did you lose all of us? Maybe bring us back to. Yeah,
okay, I
yeah.
fixed it, I think.
Okay, can you guys hear us now? Check, 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 check. Maybe bring us back to the you and me talking screen for a second.
This should definitely run. Talk.
Okay, talk, check, check.
Yeah.
Okay, we're back.
Okay, now let's switch back and it should work now.
Okay. Can you guys still hear us? Okay. Big Pod and Peter still. Okay, good. Apparently the screen share was just too hot and it broke our audio, so now we're back. I'm not sure where I lost everybody, but what I was trying to say there was that
now,
you know, we have these slim kits or starter kits, we call them, built out in a bunch of different languages, and they have examples. So if you're looking for a good starting place and you see your language here, that's a good place to click into to just learn a little bit more. You can see a GitHub example, and then there's even a container that you could kick the tires on. And that actually might be a good starting point because I actually haven't used these too much recently. So now what I'm doing is I'm dropping into the Slim portal, and actually before we get into this, let me kind of situate people in where the Slim portal starts. You know, when you first log in, you're going to click the sign in button. You're going to come over here and log in with either your GitHub, your GitLab, or your Bitbucket. I'll use GitHub since I know that's already logged in. And you're going to come to a screen that looks a lot like this. And so what you have is a tutorial demo of container hardening. You have a search box where you can search for any different container that you want. And then we have a bunch of different sort of public containers that are available down here. Now, a lot of you are going to be working on your own projects and containers that you have running. So, if they're public containers on, say, Docker Hub or ECR, you can search for them. So if I search for like my SlimPSV username that's my handle on Docker Hub, I'll find all of my different images that I've built and all these little like test images, and I can use those as my starting point. If the images are part of a private registry, then you're going to have to come over here and set up what we call a connector. And these connectors, you know all the logos, so you can connect up to pretty much any container registry or repo that you have. And it's pretty simple, just follow the prompts. We'll need an API key of yours or an access token, depending on kind of how yours works. We'll tell you whether that's active or not. And then once you connect your registry, you'll get a screen that looks something like this, where you have your Docker Hub registry over here, and here's my SlimPSV one because that's the one that I happen to connect. I don't know if I have the ability to shut down the spammers. Oh, our podcast blocking people for us. Thank you, our podcast with the big assist. It's a Thanksgiving Day miracle. Here we go. Thanks for that. So, so if I come in here, I find all of the different like apps and projects. So this is pretty similar. If you've been building a project for the Slim Hackathon, connect your registry, come to this screen, and then you can kind of go into what that app is. These are a bunch of the apps that we've built at different times on the site, and this is, I think, like a good starting point for us. But if you're curious just a little bit about how like the Slim platform works, and you want to kind of kick the tires on it with an image that you know well, you can start with something like Python or Node.js. These are like really popular images. So this is Python latest, and you can come into the platform, and what you get first is this like suite of analysis tools. And this is where we're going to start to kind of get into like the analysis phase of doing container security. So, whenever you're consuming, say, like a base image, let's say I wanted to use Python latest as the base image for my Django application, right? I really want to know what's going on with Python latest. It might be a good image to use, might be a bad image to use. I sort of want to know all of the different things that are in that base image. I also want to know sort of what development tools are available in it. Does it run as root? All of these different things that I might want to look into and change either in my Docker file or through the slimming process as I go ahead and build out my image, right? So, and again, if you guys have questions in the chat, please pop them into the chat. Let's make this super interactive. Big Pot, if you have something you want me to focus on, or if I'm going off into left field, let me know.
I'll let you know.
All right, perfect. So here we get a file explorer of the container. So here we're looking at the container. This is, again, the Python latest container. And we can do things like search for things inside of it. So curl is a common one. Like, you might be doing some debugging and you want to curl something outside of the container or use that utility inside the container. And if you search for that in here, you can find it here by looking and seeing that, like, curl is over there in the user bin folder. So, okay, that's great. So that's kind of what the file explorer is for. You can also like sort by layers, and you can understand what your entry point to your container is. You can even kind of like zoom down into that one. So this is like a pretty useful tool for analyzing base images or understanding the difference between whatever base image you're going to use. You can do all these same analyses on your own container images, that is to say the ones from your project. The next thing I would do is click over to this overview tab, where you're going to get a lot of good information about, sort of what we call the attack surface of the container. So you get a bunch of key insights, such as the container size and what architecture it's on and all that kind of stuff. But it's going to tell you what user that's running as. Most base images in Docker, it's just the way it works. Run as root. that should be updated as you go to build your container so that you're not running as root, you're running as a non-root user, because you don't want the container as it's running in production to have root access. You see things like shells. Like shells are really, really good for development, right? But they're not always that great to have in production because people can use them to interact with your container, or they can use that to get out of your container, or there are a bunch of different attacks that start by leveraging the shell that's in a container. So
it also just means that they can even search your container, learn more about your container, and then utilize those tools to get out. And even for some tools, it even means they cannot even utilize them if there is no shell. So they can having a shell is a giant problem in a production level application.
Yep, exactly right. And same thing with files with special permissions. So you really want to have the minimal set of files with special permissions in it for all the same reasons that Big Pot was talking about. They can be leveraged for attacks. Our friends at AWS, when you talk about removing these things on the way to production, the people at AWS call that defanging the computer, and I just thought, or the container, and I thought that's like a really cool way to talk about why you would remove some of these things. Obviously, things like certs and that kind of thing are important to know, and then any environment variables. You want to make sure you're not putting any environment variables into production that have things like secrets in them. That's a pretty commonly known thing, but certainly if you had your hackathon project and you had stored your API key as a local environment variable and that made it into your container, that would probably be a black mark against your project from the security side, from the judges. So just be cautious about those things, and our tools allow you to look at all of those things. The third thing that I would look at, as you're analyzing base images and you're analyzing your own containers, I would look at this vulnerabilities report. And so we use two very common open source vulnerability scanners, Gripe, which is supported by the Anchor company, and Trivy, which is supported by the Aquasec company. And we run vulnerability scanning on all of the containers to show, what are the different vulnerabilities that are inside these containers, and to provide a bunch more information on them. Now, every container, especially every base image container, just by definition, especially those that are latest and stuff like that, they tend to have some number of vulnerabilities in them. Again, kind of back to that developer experience versus security conundrum that people always find themselves in, right? If you have things like curl, and there's a CVE that uses curl to do an exploit, right? Well, you just have to kind of naturally live with that vulnerability, because you need that developer tool in there, and it has that vulnerability that's related to it. But this gives you a lot of insight as to what's there, how severe is it, and then are there fixes for it? How do I better understand what this vulnerability is? We're not expecting everybody in the hackathon to overnight become security analysts and researchers. This is kind of like an exercise in being aware. But certainly the ability to remove vulnerabilities from your containers makes them more secure, and people who really take the action steps to address vulnerabilities in their containers are going to do better in the hackathon, I believe. So cool. It sounds like I am echoing.
I fixed it right away.
Okay. All right.
But right now we have your face on stream as well.
Hey. All right. Hi, everybody. Awesome. We're learning as we go. We're doing it. Cool. So this is a base image. Now, what you will notice here is you don't get this sort of hardened capability here. You do get this compare capability. So there's one tool that I want to show here, which is called our container diff or container compare. And what I can do here is actually compare two different base images. So actually, let's see if I compare. So it looks like latest. I'll compare latest, and I'm going to compare that to, let's say, the Slim starting point image, right? So I'm going to compare 3.195 Slim. And I click on compare. So this is a good way to do sort of base image analysis, depending on which base image you want to use. Now, some people will use the Alpine base images. Some people will use the Slim images. Some people will use Ubuntu and then install Python in it if they need it. It really kind of comes down to what you want to do. But with this diff tool, you can actually really quickly see the difference between. So we were using the latest sort of the full image, and then we're comparing it to the Slim image, and we can see that a lot of this stuff has gotten removed already. So now again, some of these things might be tools and things that we need or that we would like to have in the container. Again, I'll use the curl example and search for it. So the Slim container does not have curl in it. So, my assumption is going to be that, that would be kind of annoying if I was doing development and I wanted curl, but if I could always install it in my Docker file, right? But that's kind of annoying to have to install it, then remove it later. But my guess is that if I look at the vulnerabilities diff on this, yeah, what I'm going to see is actually that the Slim image, and to be clear, this isn't the Slim.AI image. This is the community-supported Slim version of the Python image.
It
It
is
just naturally has
based on certain version of Debian, I believe, that is
Yep.
already cut down on what it has, if I remember correctly.
Yep, exactly. And you can see some of that in the image metadata diff. So you can see the Python latest is 932 megabytes. This one is 125 megabytes. It just has many fewer things in it.
For example,
but it still
does
has
it have an SSH agent? It doesn't have a key generation for SSH and so on.
Yep. So yeah, so you're making some trade-offs there by changing your base image, and that's just the only thing that we're trying to show. So you can be a good consumer of kind of whatever your starting point images are. You can also do this thing. You can do all of the stuff that I just showed, just as kind of a reminder. Let's say you're running sidecars or database data store apps. You can do all of these same analyses, say on like Redis or Postgres, if you're using those in your application stack. So that's a good use of the Slim platform, is kind of this analysis piece. The other thing I'll say is that we offer the ability to easily add things to collections. So you saw that kind of in the UI before, and I would recommend people do this if they're going to do the hackathon project. Let's say you have like 4 container, your app is comprised of 4 containers, like, add them to their own collection. That way you can kind of easily understand them later. And we have a bunch of new tools and features and functionality that are coming on collections that are going to make this thing really rocket powered, and people are going to really like it. For now, it's like kind of a convenience feature, so you can get back to your containers, and you can do a mix of public or private or your own personal containers and sort of community images or public images in these collections. So cool. So that's all that. I'm going to go into one of my own images. And I guess I was kind of thinking that let's try this first. And I'm going to kind of take a shortcut and say, let's say hypothetically, I've already built my container image for my hackathon project, and I have it up in Docker Hub, and I've connected my registry. So I'm pulling all my awesome information in here. And let's say that that container is, I'm trying to think of just like a good example of one. No, you know what? Yeah, you know what I'm going to do. Let's go with that hypothetical, and then what I'm going to do is actually use one of the containers that Steven built, using these Slim kits that I was talking about before. So if I go down here and I go to the Node.js app, right? And I click the Get Started button there. What it's going to do is it's actually going to bring me into an image that's in the Slim Examples repo, and it's called the Slim Nuxt demo. And this is kind of an older image that we've used, but I think it works pretty well, so I'm gonna kind of run with it. So if I go into this image, so this is an app that we built in Nuxt, and you can see if I click over on the overview, I can see it's 1.3 gigabytes, so it's a really, really large image. I believe it's just a simple kind of like blog site. But I can already start to see that I've taken some steps to address some of the security issues. So we're running this as user node now, not user root, even though the Docker file for this one is running from like a node image, like a node latest image. So that's already kind of created some, like, just a little bit more security for me. So I'm moving in the right direction, but I still have all the shells, I still have all the files with special permissions, have some certificates, and looks like my labels and environment variables are pretty safe, but those would be good things to check. But what I can do now is get into this hardening aspect. And so this is the process of basically running your container through the Slim platform and securing it for production using our automated toolset. So what I can do is I can come in here, I go into harden the image, and I'm going to run in the Slim.AI test environment. We have some cool features and functionality that are coming soon where you can actually run your containers in your own test environments, but that's still under like in development. For right now, I'm just going to run it in the Slim platform. Now, since I've connected my Docker Hub repo, I can actually push the newly slimmed image right back into that same repo after I'm done with it. I could also store it to, like, we have a little local storage here called the Slim Cloud. That's like a convenience feature if I wanted to do that. Or I could actually push it to any other repo that I wanted that I already connected. I'm going to push this over to my own namespaced account, which is SlimPSV, and we'll call it Nux Demo. We'll keep the same name, and then we'll call it Latest Slim. So if I come over here, I get a few kind of options for hardening the image. You know, we have this sort of Nuxt.js specific configuration, but most people who are using sort of web applications, web style or REST API style applications are going to use this server application. If your hackathon project happens to be like a CLI tool, you can run it through the CLI application. There, the interactive testing is a little more difficult. I know there are a couple people who are asking about that, so that's sort of where the road would fork for you, so to speak, in this experience. Everything else should be fine, but should be the same. But if you're running something that's like interactive, like a command line prompt that's running in the container, then you'd want to start here. I'll start with the server app. Now, what this stage is asking is, what are the things that I know I want to include? Most often you would interact with this screen as part of a debugging process. So let's say you ran the Slim container and you notice that, oh, it's actually like deleting these static image files. They might not be loading at the time the container loads, but they delete this static image files, and I actually want to keep those in. I could kind of go into my app folder, you know, find my, you know, content folder maybe, and say, actually, like, hey, don't delete these articles. I want to keep them. Now, I don't need to do that for this application because actually the Slim sensor is smart enough to know that these articles are going to be loaded when the application loads. But it is something that happens, like, you know, if you're debugging an app and you're like, oh, okay, can't figure out like why these images aren't there, or this file got replaced, or I'm getting this strange error and it says this library is missing. Go through and kind of include things specifically, and that should solve most of your problems. I won't do it here. We also have the option, if you have a Docker Compose file, you can upload it here. It gives us some additional information that goes into the slimming process. And I don't have one for this one, so I'm not going to do it. We also have the ability to add environment variables. So if you happen to be, you know, and need an environment variable in the production container, say that you need for your CI pipeline or you need for your cloud infrastructure, you can add it here. I don't need to do that here. And then finally, we're going to auto detect whichever ports are open on the container. Occasionally, if you have like sort of a more complex app, you might want to add specifically on a manual basis, like different ports that are being used by your container. But that's only if you're like, you know, that's a pretty use case specific thing, and you would know if you needed to do that. So here I have this thing that's like, you know, we call it the configure or the optimization configuration. And you can see actually it saves your configuration over time. So what's happened is I've actually done some things to, I've included a few different aspects. And my screen just went dark, but I guess that's just me. But you know, you don't need a ton here. A lot will be done by the automated process. On the complete flip side, if you have like messed around with Docker Slim and you know Docker Slim backwards and forwards and you know all of the different flags and functionality, you can click this edit the configuration button, and that brings you into like a much more robust sort of version of the different flags and features that are included in the slimming process and capability. We just typically find that it's like a little too much for most people to do. And so we sort of recommend that you stay at this screen and then just click next. So, okay, so here's like the magic moment, right? Which is like, what the heck is happening, right? So what's happening is in the Slim Cloud, we're running your application. We're running a series of tests against it. Think of them as like smoke tests. So we're gonna hit all of the API endpoints that you have, say, or go to that port that's exposed and see what happens when the container is run and the application is run in different things. And we're making like a knowledge graph of all of the different things that are happening. And we're going to use that to rebuild a functionally equivalent version of the container that has only what you need and nothing that you don't. So we'll see what the result of that is at the very end of this process. But, if you're super curious about what's happening, you can come down here and see a bunch of log files about what's happening. And, a lot of it has to do with sort of HTTP requests going into the container, watching that, and then coming back. Take a brief pause while this is kind of loading. BigPod, anything that I missed, you think, in the hardening or the analysis side? And then curious if people have any questions or anything. Yeah. You're keeping the lights on here for us over here. So yeah, that's all good. We appreciate this. So and yeah, we're gonna output this as a video later so people can watch it. We'll be sharing that with the Discord community. So if you're coming to the stream for the first time and it's before December 5th and you'd like to get in on the hackathon, if you go to Slim.AI, you'll find a link to our Discord. Drop into the Discord. You can get a bunch of information about this hackathon that we're running. There are prizes. There's a lot of community. There are people who are still looking for teams. There are teams looking for people. So if you drop into the Discord, you'll find a bunch of people kind of talking about it and talking about different Slim stuff. But it sounds like Primoz, we can't hear you now. So yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Thanks for the nod on that, Chris. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, you keep talking and then let us know
now
when
we
you can
should
hear.
be able to hear me. I click mute by accident.
Okay. The classic mute click. Okay, cool. So awesome. So we can see what happened. So this container actually got reduced by 75%. So it went from 1.3 gigabytes down to 300 megabytes. So, okay, so this is a pretty good outcome. And this is like literally what the Slim platform does. This is what we're built for. I can download this image myself as a tar file and use this docker load command to load the new Slim image. But I actually don't need to because I've actually already pushed it up into my Docker Hub repo at the end of this process. That's what I did at the very, very start there. Now, what I can see from this, I also get that diff view that we were seeing. So all I have to do is scroll down to see the diff view and see what changed between the original image, that 1.3 gigabyte image, and the new image. And, again, since we like examples like curl, I don't know, I actually don't know if curl was in the original container. I guess I'm about to find out. I can see here that curl was in the original container, but now it's been removed in the production container, in the Slim container. And so that's a really good sign of security. And if that's the type of stuff that you can highlight, hey, here's all the stuff that we've removed from our container as we went through the slimming process because we didn't need it, that's a really, really good outcome. And that's something that you can, kind of talk about. The other thing that you can showcase, is that if you remember, we were talking about shells. Again, these shells are going to represent attack surface. Now, maybe your container needs shells in it. And that's, you don't want to remove them if you don't need them, if you do need them. But if you don't need them and they get removed, then you've just taken like a good step forward in security. And if you click on this image metadata diff, you can see side by side, the original container had the shells, the new container does not. Same with files with special permissions. We've removed a lot of those because we just didn't need them. And a lot of stuff about the different binaries that we removed. And then Yep.
We have two questions in chat.
Yeah.
First comes from Chris.
Yep.
The hackathon mentions there are being about security assessment. Are judges looking for readmes that are similar to starter kits we offer?
Yeah, I think the security assessment, I think you could use some of these screens in the Slim platform to just show kind of like I'm showing right now, this side by side diff would be a good thing to maybe screen cap or call out. Yeah, the readmes in the starter kits are probably a good starting template for the way you would want to look at the security assessment. So yeah, I think short answer, yes. Danny, who is a judge in chat, I think can also help answer. But I think any of the artifacts that you find, and specifically the one that I'm about to show, I think will be really useful for you as you kind of go through and put this together. If you want to just take those readmes from the starter kits and kind of copy that and use that as a way to talk about your application, what happened, I think that's a great starting point. I hadn't thought about that. That's a good idea. So
Another question comes from Cosmos. Hi, project contains deep learning models and to make the API running for the web interface. We have either run the container locally as no free platforms are available. Is it fine if backend is not hosted, uh, but they can provide temporary application link for judging if needed?
yeah, that I think I saw that question before Cosmos, and thanks for asking. Again, yes, that is fine. I will have to defer probably to Lindsay, who can answer more specifically on Monday about the rules for like what exactly we want shared and how. But like high level answer is yes, that's fine. I think that let me think about it. So yeah, the app doesn't necessarily need to be like running on a cloud server somewhere in order for us to assess it. As long as the judges can get access to the code or run it themselves locally or be able to see it in some way, um, then we should be fine. I'd say for the containers themselves, it depends a little bit. Um, Let me think about this. It depends a little bit like how private you want to be about them. So like if you wanted to work primarily locally with the Slim tools, you would have to use the Docker Slim open source project, and you can run that locally. That's just like a local CLI tool. So that would be a little bit different than using this stuff that I'm showing here. Um, if you're okay with putting the containers into either a private cloud or a public cloud, again, if they're public, they're public. So, up to you. I don't want you sharing your IP out there, but if you put them up in public cloud or you put them in a private cloud and connect them to the Slim registry, then you can take screenshots of some of these things, and it makes it pretty easy for us to understand exactly what you did as part of the slimming process and all of that kind of stuff. So hope that answers the question. It's a little nuanced. We can get you a more specific answer, and maybe when Martin's back, he can sync with you one-on-one, and you guys can chat about the best way to deliver the app. But yeah, high level, it'll be fine. So cool.
If there are any other questions, please let us know in chat. Now,
Cool.
Peter, you can continue.
Perfect. No, that sounds good. Great questions. And yeah, Cosmos, thanks again for that question. I did see it in Discord earlier. We were just kind of scrambling to see if we could make this stream happen or not. So I didn't get a chance to answer it. Appreciate it. Yeah, awesome. Cool. Yeah. Ping us again on Monday when Lindsay's back, and we can definitely get you some like very specific answers about how we can share those apps with the judges. Cool. So if you remember, we had sort of the vulnerability diff screen, and Chris mentioned the READMEs for the starter kits. We also have READMEs throughout sort of like the GitHub repos that are linked there. Again, this is like github.com/SlimDevOps. There are a ton of examples in there too, and there's READMEs in a lot of those. So those can provide templates as well. But, this is like, if you go through the slimming process, you're going to kind of get this for free. You should have your app should see a reduction in vulnerabilities because you were just removing a lot of the attack surface that didn't need to be in there. The percentage change, it can be a little misleading at times, so I wouldn't focus too much on just oh, I removed 20,000 vulnerabilities. My app is the most secure, because you might have been starting from a really insecure place. But
Uh,
by slimming, you can come here and see like what got removed that you didn't need, and that's a good security story.
there
Yeah.
is also a bit of a false negative situation with all the scanners right now, no matter what
Mm-hmm.
it is, because due to the nature of how they work, which is using package databases from package managers like apt in Debian and Ubuntu base image examples to remove to see what vulnerabilities you have, what packages you have, what versions they are. So during streaming process, we also remove those, and because of that, this and no matter what scanner it is, it will show that you have zero vulnerabilities coming from those package managers, which is kind of false negative because of that. It's a how to call it deficiency of every currently available uh, uh, vulnerability scanner. And as an example, a couple of weeks ago, I was working on one of my own applications for personal usage, and I did see reduction to zero. I was like, "Ooh, that's fancy." Then I opened up the diff, or actually just did a normal view of my container, and right away I saw one vulnerability. I saw the file that was supposed to be removed due to vulnerability, or that not it was supposed to be, but was needed, but was still vulnerable. But that's kinda where we are now.
Mm.
Hopefully, we're gonna get
Yeah,
better in future. We and
yeah, and
all of the security scanning landscape, really.
yeah, and I know there's some work going on to address some of those issues on our team. I think one of the things that you can do to make it a little better. So what I did on this application is include the node modules package, which
Yes,
maintains a lot of the metadata data, which allows you
Node
to
is one
take.
of the examples, or Node package manager is one of the examples that actually still remains in
Mhm.
enough of the capacity that you can see the main problems
Yep.
are the package managers for your base image, for your Linux operating system, we could call them,
Hmm.
since
Hmm.
they are very much in completely separate space. They aren't anyway self-contained like node modules and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So those tend to get removed. Same is for RPM database for Fedora or CentOS or Red Hat base images,
Yep.
and same is even for Arch and Arch's uh, Alpum based images, and I believe also for Alpine and their APK based images. So it's standard problem across board.
Yep. So definitely something to be aware of. I think something that you can do if there are still vulnerabilities being listed in your containers is go back to that kind of like file system overview, and if there are, let's say there's vulnerabilities being listed down here, so here's something. Let's see, what is this? Parsequery.js. I don't even really know what this thing is or what it does. But if I come back up here and, oops, sorry, come to the file system overview, maybe I can take a look at parsequery and see if that's in this container somewhere. So, that's a bit of a manual process to go through, but as part of the slimming process, and so I do find that library. So maybe I can get some more information about that library to say, okay, um, maybe I could get like a version number. Maybe that thing just needs to be updated, and the fix is in the new version or something like that. So I can kind of go through ones and twos, and maybe even solve some of the vulnerability problems that are still left in the Slim container. So,
It is also good
uh,
to remember that not all vulnerabilities are actually making you vulnerable. So that is because not all vulnerabilities can be used in a
mhm.
container, can be, or say, abused, and certain vulnerabilities require shell access to begin with. And since you remove the shell, yay, no access to those vulnerabilities.
Right. So yeah, like we said, for the purposes of the hackathon, I don't think anybody's like anticipating people suddenly turning into security researchers overnight. I think if you can do a reasonably good assessment, again, start with some of those README files, Chris Holland, I think that's a great idea. Start with some of these tools that we have in the platform. You can run your own external security scanners if you happen to use Sneak or Docker Scan or AWS Inspector, and compare the fat slim images and see how those go. But I think a lot of these things around attack surface are also just as viable and important pieces of attack surface. And so making a note of that be worthwhile.
Yeah.
So cool. So let's kind of recap on what we did. Oh, so I think there's one final step here, and I don't know that I'll be able to do it. No, actually, I haven't done this in a while. This might be kind of fun. It's also going to be a little sporting. So, the thing you also want to make sure of at the end of the slimming process is that your application still works. That nothing changed from the start of the image to the slimmed image. And so being able to run the image again and kind of go through and see some of the test cases, if you have good tests for your containers, that'll go a long way and that'll help. So I don't know that we put testing in specifically in the hackathon rules, but certainly having a couple tests really help if you have tests written against your applications and your images. And being certainly after you run things through like the slimming process, or this hardening process, as we call it, you'll want to run them again and make sure that they work. So that's just kind of the last piece of it. I won't torture you guys with watching me do command line Docker things. I don't know if this image works. I'll test it in the background, but I think that kind of completes it. Is there anything else, Big Pot, that you would have us look at for kind of the hackathon and the demo people?
I think that's all.
Oh. Chris, cool. Chris says I hardened one of my images and now I lost it. So here's what you can do. If you still have the image, so I'm trying to think of which one I was in, SlimDevOps demo. And if I go to that image, and I go on vulnerabilities, hopefully, you should be able to see the scan history of it, so you can kind of get back to the exact scan. If you want to just compare it to the original image, say you went through that hardening process, and then you could rerun the hardening process, though that's like kind of that's not the most streamlined way to, yeah, that's kind of the nuclear option.
But I think should be cached, so maybe it will be fast.
Yeah. The other thing you can do is if you have the original image up, so I slimmed this one from the, this one, from this slim example, SlimNux demo latest, and I can just compare it to the image that I just created, and you'll effectively get the same screen. It's just using the diff tool instead of like the diff tool that comes at the end of the hardening process. So yeah, I know our team's been talking about ways to make it easier to kind of get back to where you were in that hardening process. And if our product managers have any hot tips or new features or new pathways for that, we'll share them in the chat. But hopefully this helps you to get back to kind of where you were, just using this compare diff tool to the two images. So cool. And yeah, so Chris, would love to hear how that went for you. If you guys have any feedback on the platform or the product, we'd love to have it. We're still in beta, so we're still trying to make things work. And okay, cool, awesome. So yeah, we always know that we can make UIs better, we can make flows better, we can add features and stuff like that. So let us know what you're seeing and how things are going, and we look forward to people sharing what they have with us. So, yeah, Big Pod. That's all I had to share. You want to just bring it back to just you and me, and we can take questions if people have questions and stuff like that. So,
if you have any questions, let us know.
yeah. And if not, then we look forward to seeing everybody's projects. Hopefully Martin will be back next week. I am going to be out of the office next week, so it'll be up to Big Pod and Lindsay and Steven to be answering questions. But ping the hackathon channel. You're still looking for team members. I think there's still a couple people floating around looking for teams, a couple teams out there. Danny says, telling me to design a UI. Nice. Yeah, me neither. You saw my product.codes website from the other week. Yeah.
This UI that is for stream, this is the best look I ever made.
Yeah, and to be clear, our designer Grace probably made the most of it. There's a really good font though, Big Pod. You know, what was the font again?
Cascadia Mono.
Cascadia Mono.
Comes with Windows Terminal, I believe.
So yeah, never let the engineering crews do the UI or let the UI people do the code, I guess. So awesome. Well, looking forward to some great UIs in the hackathon project. And again, I'm in the Slim.AI Discord channel. So again, if you're new, you're watching this later, go to Slim.AI, join our Discord. You can learn all about this hackathon. You can connect with us. I'm at PSV in the Discord channel. And yeah, glad we could put this stream together. Thanks everybody for joining. Yeah, he's trying to use Docker Slim CLI on Windows, but he is having trouble. Okay.
WSL is a lot of help. He should use WSL and have Docker installed in that namespace of WSL. So that WSL environment. With the help of newest features like systemd for WSL, it should work great.
Yeah, and if you do have problems with Docker Slim, feel free to ping questions in our Discord. There is a dedicated Docker Slim Discord, but all of the same people are in it from the Slim.AI side. So we can get you guys some help if you're still struggling with Docker Slim on Windows. I use it on Windows, so I know it.
Yeah, I use it
on
on Windows as well in a WSL environment.
Yep. So cool.
You can ping me. I should be Big Pod in Discord, so you'll find me there and ping me.
Cool. All right. And Danny says, I use Docker Desktop via WSL. My code is stored in Ubuntu WSL instance. Use DD's integrations to access Docker from that instance. Oh, that's cool. That's a cool setup. Yeah, I think like doing like people's Docker setups at some point would be really funny. I'm traveling between like Ubuntu to do a lot of these examples, and then I jump over to my MacBook to do chat and stuff like that, which means I switch over to ARM64 images, but then I usually stream on Windows, so then I'm in a Windows environment. It's just chaos. So anyway, all right. Well, thanks everybody for joining. We'll post this video into the Slim.AI Discord when it's ready. Let us know if you have questions, and thanks again, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody in the States who is celebrating it, and big shout out to our friend Martin. Hope you are feeling better. Get well soon, buddy. So, all right.
See you guys.
Peace out.
Next time.